Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Each week this month, we've been looking at healing from a slightly different angle. Not just the biology, but the mindset, the relationships, and the daily choices that make recovery possible. This week, we're talking about something that can feel tricky. Because while you're working hard to protect your health, you're also living in a world that doesn't always make that easy. We live in a culture where poor health is common, even expected, and where habits that lead to it are built right into daily life. That can make recovery feel like you're swimming upstream. And here's the thing, if you've ever felt like the odd one out because you're making changes, it's not just your imagination. Social norms are powerful. Our brains are wired to notice what the group is doing and to feel an instinctive pull to match it. That wiring kept our ancestors alive, but in modern life, it can make personal health goals harder to hold on to. But here's the good news, you don't have to fight the current alone. You can learn to navigate it, to choose your own direction, and to build a sense of stability and joy, even in an environment that doesn't always support it. So today, we'll explore how to live well in a culture that often normalizes illness, and how to protect your remission without letting it become a rigid list of rules. We'll talk about the science, the social dynamics, and the values that can help keep you steady over the long haul. Let's get started. We live in a world where chronic illness isn't just common, it's almost expected. Think about how often you hear someone say, well, that's just a part of getting older, or everyone in my family has this, so of course I will too. These ideas sink in over time, shaping how we think about what's possible. In the United States alone, the CDC reports that 6 in 10 adults live with at least one chronic disease, and 4 in 10 live with two or more. These things, like heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and depression, account for 90% of our nation's $4.5 trillion annual healthcare costs. Because illness is normalized, the daily habits that contribute to it can look perfectly ordinary. We don't even question them because they're part of the cultural landscape, built into work schedules, social gatherings, celebrations, even entertainment. Add to this the constant influence of marketing and media. These industries are experts at using repetition, bright imagery, and emotional storytelling to create a sense that certain products or lifestyles are not only normal, but essential. They speak to our deep wiring for reward, belonging, and even identity. When those messages are everywhere, choosing a different path can feel like an act of rebellion, even if that path is the one that actually supports your health. And the brain notices that difference. It notices when you are going with the flow, and it notices when you're swimming against it, which is why sometimes making the healthy choice feels harder than it should. Neuroscience gives us a fascinating window into why cultural influence is so powerful. Let's start with mirror neurons. These special brain cells activate not just when we do something, but also when we watch someone else do it. They're part of the reason we can learn by observation, but they also mean we're naturally inclined to imitate the behaviors we see most often. And here's the hopeful side. When you spend time around people who are living in ways you want to live, your mirror neurons are quietly learning from them. You're more likely to pick up their habits, their problem solving strategies, and even their mindset. often without consciously trying. This is why surrounding yourself with recovery oriented people can be such a game changer. Then there's dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a huge role in motivation. We often think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but it's more accurate to call it a learning and reward chemical. One of the things it rewards is social alignment, doing what your group does. This is hardwired into us because for most of human history, being accepted by the group meant survival. So when you make a choice that goes against the group's norm, you might feel a subtle emotional discomfort, even before anyone says anything to you. And then there's the stress load of swimming upstream. Every time you hold your ground in the face of social pressure or cultural cues, your nervous system has to work a little harder. You may not consciously feel stressed, but the brain registers it as a mild threat. Over time, if you don't have ways to recover from that stress, it can wear down your mental and emotional resilience. This is where we find ourselves in a bit of a double bind. On one hand, making choices that support your health can create friction in relationships, work settings, or even family traditions. On the other hand, avoiding that friction by going along with the norm can put your progress and sometimes your health at risk. This tension means that living well in a culture that normalizes illness isn't just about willpower or discipline. It's about learning to navigate these moments intentionally, deciding ahead of time how you want to handle them, and building the skills to follow through without burning out. One of the most surprising and sometimes painful parts of long term recovery is realizing that not everyone will be on board with your changes. Some people may feel threatened by your progress because it highlights their own struggles. Others might simply not understand what you're doing or why. And some may even try to pull you back into old patterns, whether consciously or not. This is why boundaries are essential, not to cut people out, but to protect your emotional and physical safety. A boundary might be as simple as deciding which conversations you're willing to have or where you spend your time. For example, you might choose to leave a gathering early if the atmosphere starts to feel unsafe for your recovery. You might decide not to explain every detail of your health plan to someone who repeatedly questions it. You might keep certain topics off limits with specific people, not to be secretive, but to prevent unnecessary stress. At the same time, it's important not to isolate. The goal isn't to live in a bubble, it's to find your safe people and safe spaces. These are the relationships and environments where you can relax, where you don't have to explain or defend your choices, and where you can recharge. When you have these safe havens, you can engage with the wider culture without being swept away by it. Living well in a sick culture takes resilience, and resilience isn't something you're born with or without. It's something you build over time. One of the most powerful ways to strengthen resilience is to keep your why front and center. This might be your health goals, the people who depend on you, or the vision you have for your future. Staying connected with your support system is equally important. Even a quick check in with someone who understands can remind you you're not alone in this. And finally, practice self compassion, especially when things don't go perfectly. Everyone has moments when they get pulled back by old cues or cultural pressures. What matters most is how quickly and gently you find your way back. Let's take a few minutes to think through each of these prompts together. First, where in your life do you most notice the pull of cultural norms that don't support your health? Maybe it's at work, where certain routines or social expectations make it harder to stick to what supports you. Or maybe it's family gatherings, where traditions can clash with your health goals. It might even be in everyday conversations or media messages. Think about where those pulls are strongest for you and just notice them without judgment. Second, what boundaries could help you stay steady without isolating yourself? Boundaries don't have to be walls. They can be gentle lines that protect your well being while still allowing you to connect with others. Maybe it's choosing certain topics you won't discuss with particular people. Maybe it's setting limits on how long you stay in certain environments. What are the boundaries that would make you feel grounded and safe? And finally, who are your safe people and how can you connect with them more often? These are the friends, family members, or communities where you feel understood and accepted without having to explain yourself. Who comes to mind? How can you create more moments with them, even if it's just a quick message, a phone call, or spending time in a shared activity that feels good to you? You don't have to answer these perfectly right now. The goal is to simply plant the seeds of awareness so you can come back to them later and build on what you're noticed today. The culture we live in shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. When we understand how norms influence our brains and behaviors, we can make more intentional choices about where to place our attention and energy. Living well in a sick culture isn't about perfection. It's about building a life that feels aligned, stable, and joyful, even when the environment doesn't always make that easy. And with strong boundaries, safe people, and a clear why, recovery can thrive anywhere. Thanks for listening.